Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayet. In this session, we'll be discussing from the same two verses which we have been discussing past 3 sessions. This is part 4 of the 2 verses 9 and 10 of the 19th chapter of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. These 2 verses describe the list of great saintly persons who arrived at the spot where Parikshit Maharaj had decided to retire to the holy place on the bank of the river Ganga, in order to prepare himself for going back to Godhead. So the description is now being given in the purport by Srila Prabhupada, the description of Vishwamitra Muni or Rishi, famous personality. Vishwamitra, you would have heard the name, many times you would have heard the name. So he is also called as Gadhi Sutta, son of Gadhi. So Srila Prabhupada describes a brief history of this great sage, a great sage of austerity and mystic power. All these sages are famous for having performed severe austerities, and by dint of performing austerities they acquire mystic power, and that mystic power is extraordinary mystic power which actually ordinary people cannot have. Ordinary people cannot have. It is just like I may have some power, you may have some power, somebody else may also have some power, but there is a difference in the extent to which we can utilize that power for different purposes. Just like, take for example the amount of physical strength. Now an adult has more physical strength than a small child, but among different adults have different degrees of physical strength. Now when you compare the physical strength of a human being on this earth to the physical strength of a heavenly Devata, then the Devata will have many times more physical strength than the human beings. Of course, when I say physical strength, the Devatas don't have a physical body. I mean the strength, material strength, the bodily strength possessed due to material position. So Devatas have many times more power, more strength, more knowledge, more intelligence, more beauty, more wealth, more facilities, longer duration of life than humans on the earth. This is a general description, but there is a gradation. So the mystic power possessed by great sages who are living in the topmost planets like Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapoloka, Satyaloka, the topmost planets in this universe. They have a very long duration of life. Some of them have a duration of life as much that of Brahma himself. Some live for several kalpas. A kalpa is a day of Brahma, which is 1000 cycle of 4 yugas on the earth planet. 1000 cycle of 4 yugas is something like 4 billion years on the earth. So there are saintly persons whose duration of life is 4 billion years. We can't even imagine how long the duration of life they live. But still, the long duration of life does not mean that they are free from the material conditions of birth and death, the material miseries of birth and death. That is never absent even in the topmost planet called Brahmaloka. So there is always the fear of death, even for Lord Brahma, what to speak of others. So the duration of life is fantastically long, but still they have to face death, and for that they have to be prepared. So they are always anxious how to actually leave this body at the time of death, so as to be able to go back to Godhead, become free from the repetition of birth and death in this material world. Further description: Vishwamitra is famous as Gadhi Sutta because his father was Gadhi, a powerful king of the province of Kanyakubja, a province of Uttar Pradesh. Although he was a Kshatriya by birth, he became a Brahmana in the very same body by the power of his spiritual achievements. Vishwamitra was a very, very a great tapasvi. He performed severe austerities and he became a Brahmana. Became a Brahmana means qualified to become a Brahmana because of his tapasya. He picked a quarrel with Vasishtha Muni when he was a Kshatriya king. It is described briefly in the description under Vasishtha. You would have heard this in a previous session, that Vasishtha was having one Kamadhenu, one special cow, which would give as much milk as one desires whenever one desires to have milk. That's a Kamadhenu. And Vasishtha was using that milk given by Kamadhenu, the cow, special cow, for his performing daily sacrifice. Sacrifice means one has to offer huge quantities of ghee in a sacrificial fire. Of course, the kind of sacrifice one does, there are varieties of sacrifice one can do as recommended in scriptures. So if one performs a fire sacrifice, one requires several ingredients, of which the most important ingredient for a fire sacrifice is cow ghee, grita. So such cow ghee is obtained by taking the milk of a cow and then turning that milk into yogurt or curds, dahi, and churning that dahi to get butter and heating that butter to make it into ghee. And that ghee has got wonderful properties and qualities. So such huge quantities of ghee are required for performing a fire sacrifice. Especially the saintly persons, the sages, they perform fire sacrifice for the sake of universal welfare. See, the way the universe is made is that our necessities are supplied according to the system of sacrifice that is carried out by the different human beings in different parts of this world and different parts of the universe. So the more the sacrifice that is performed, the better the supply of necessities for the different people of this material world. We cannot manufacture any of the things that are supplied by Mother Nature. But the supply by nature is dependent on our performing sacrifice. So the sages, because they desire the welfare of all living beings, they are engaged in welfare activity for others. That's the definition of the sadhu. One of the meanings of the word sadhu means a saintly person who lives for the benefit of others, for the welfare of others. So therefore a sadhu is always engaged in pious activities which guarantee sufficient supply of all the necessities for all the living entities in this material world by Mother Nature. So Vasishtha Muni was having the Kamadhenu, and this Vishwamitra, as the king was visiting, was going to the forest, and he happened to come to the ashram of Vasishtha Muni, and he was received very nicely by Vasishtha Muni, given a grand reception. So he was curious, how is this saintly person living in the forest able to give me a grand reception, while of course I am a king. I am very pleased with the reception I have received, but what is the source of wealth by which he has given such a grand reception? So he found out that Vasishtha Muni had a Kamadhenu. So when he learned that Vasishtha Muni had a Kamadhenu, he became very much desirous of getting such a Kamadhenu. Now such Kamadhenu is not available anywhere and everywhere. So he decided that he is going to take away that Kamadhenu from Vasishtha. And that is how a quarrel began. So therefore Srila Prabhupada says, he picked up a quarrel with Vasishtha Muni when he was a Kshatriya king. Because Vasishtha Muni, he requires that cow for his sacrifice. But this Vishwamitra forcibly took it away. And then there was a big fight. And so many things happened. And some details are given elsewhere. But it is just mentioned that when he realized his mistake, Vishwamitra, then he decided to retire from his kingly position, and he decided to perform austerities to purify himself of all the reactions. So he began very severe austerities, and he also performed a great sacrifice in cooperation with Matanga Muni, and thus was able to vanquish the sons of Vasishtha. He became a great yogi, and yet he failed to check his senses, and thus was obliged to become the father of Shakuntala, the beauty queen of world history. So he actually fathered a child, Shakuntala, a daughter, who was raised by one Kanva Rishi. When Indra sent Menaka from the heavenly planets, on Apsara, to distract this Vishwamitra Rishi when he was performing severe tapasya. Because Indra is afraid of somebody else taking away his position as the king of heaven. So when somebody is performing tapasya to accumulate punya, they automatically accumulate punya when they perform tapasya. So Indra is afraid that somebody else will exceed his punya, Indra's punya, and take away his position. So he tries to distract them from performing tapasya. So he sends these apsaras who will entice such saintly persons or sages to give up their performing the tapasya and simply enjoy life with the apsara. So Menaka came, and Vishwamitra did get distracted by Menaka, and later on he realized that he was distracted because of Menaka's enticing him, and he gave up Menaka and Menaka's company and continued his tapasya. So Srila Prabhupada describes here, once as a Kshatriya king he visited the hermitage of Vasishta Muni. He was given a royal reception. Vishwamitra wanted Vasishta's Kamadhenu named Nandini, but Vasishta would not give it. Vishwamitra stole the cow, and there was a quarrel between the sage Vasishta and the king Vishwamitra. Vishwamitra was defeated by the spiritual strength of Vasishta. Thus Vishwamitra decided to become a Brahmana, and before becoming a Brahmana he underwent severe austerity on the bank of Kaushika. So this is the history of Vishwamitra in brief given by Srila Prabhupada. I'll stop here. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.